Native plants and flowers provide both beauty and environmental benefits. And bonus, they're easy to grow. We'll show you some favorites. And we'll challenge our garden gurus with growing inquiries from across the Northland on this edition of Great Gardening Straight Ahead.
Every tree has a moment when it shines.
That's called moneywort or creeping Jenny.
You can go in and do a rejuvenating pruning.
Forage and feed for our native pollinator population.
A garden really gives you peace of mind.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. I'm Pamela Fish. Why choose plants for your landscape that you might find growing in the wild? Well, there are many good reasons for native plant restoration. I think our resident garden experts would agree with that. They are local garden professional Tom Casper and Bob Olin, an area horticulturist and educator. Welcome back, you guys.
Thanks.
Another week.
You ready to talk about native plants?
Sure.
Because what do you think they're best for?
Well, I think...
I just thought I'd put you on the spot.
Wow.
Right off
I think
the
they're
bat.
good for lots of things. Certainly dealing with a lot of the pest issues that we see in our area. A lot of the natives don't have those. Good for pollinators, good for so many things, dealing with our native soils that are so often problems. So
They're naturalized. That's the thing. They're going to grow here.
Yeah.
That's right.
So regardless of the weather, they've made it through a number of seasons. So they're just they're well suited for this area.
Okay, we're going to talk more about that as we go, but we want to welcome our phone volunteers tonight who are from the Duluth Garden Flower Society Hilltop Garden Club. There they are, just had their picture taken, but they're at the phones right now waiting for you to give them a call. So call the numbers shown on your screen there. We have a local number and a toll-free number, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can this half hour. But I want to begin with this picture of some lilacs that are in bloom, and unfortunately in Minneapolis.
I was going to say, a little early
here.
for us.
That's really nice of you.
My daughter sent me those. We were talking a couple days ago on the phone. She's like, oh, there's some lilacs in bloom. I'm like, get a picture. So she did, and also sent me these pictures that Tom had to tell me were magnolias because I've never seen a red magnolia.
Yeah, that's right. And I believe that variety is butterfly wings or butterfly. A little marginal for our region, at least in the past. But certainly folks who live a little closer to Lake Superior might want to give it a try as a fun alternative to maybe some of the routine things folks have grown in the past.
Growing nicely in the Como neighborhood in Minneapolis, and she says it smells great too. But we'll be looking forward to things like that very soon. I want to start with just a couple of quick questions because I have 3 of them here, and I thought we'd get to those and then move on to our topic. Laura from Duluth says, I recently read about Baptisia, a lupin-like flower. Does it do well in Duluth?
Yes, perennial false indigo is really the common name for it. Gets like seed pods, so it does look very similar to lupin when it goes to seed. Can be a little bit aggressive, gets pretty good size, but beautiful pale blue flowers that are really outstanding in our environment. So
yeah, fairly tall. I've got a big clump of it in my garden, and it goes and goes and goes.
If it survives at Pam's,
you can grow it too.
You can grow it too.
Okay, Kelly in Cloquet has some shrub, or is wondering about shrubs, especially hydrangea and red burning bush, and when they should be pruned.
Well, the hydrangea is the one that's a little bit challenging because, we don't want to prune out any of the flower blooms. And at one time we had hydrangea that bloomed exclusively on old wood or exclusively on new wood. Now we've got some that are blooming on both.
Right.
So you really want to take a little look, and if you see those buds that are beginning to swell, that's the portion of the plant that you do not prune out. And obviously, if you've got dead wood in there, you can prune them. So you have to be just a little bit more careful, but you can kind of examine the plant. You'll know what you've got. But great hardy plants for this area. So many of them, I think we've got so many new introductions that are really beautiful for this area.
And burning bush really right now is a perfect time, or actually just a little bit before now. They're breaking bud, but you can prune those just about any time. So get in, if they want to do a little structural kinds of things or take it down in height, you could do that right now.
Okay, let's take one more from Brian in Superior. Is wondering about the best way to find and plant horseradish and how to care for it and where to plant it in the garden.
Well, you want to plant it in the garden someplace where you can contain it and control it.
It really goes, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Not too difficult to get established, and but it can be pretty invasive, pretty aggressive self-seeds, so you have to be just a little careful of it. Not too difficult to get started.
Yeah. Preferably like in a raised garden setting where, as Bob mentioned, you can control it and keep it confined, or it's going to take off, go underneath your lawn and pop up 3, 4, 5 feet away and certainly take over areas if you don't keep it under control.
And no special conditions needed for that?
It does well in pretty much all of our conditions. So.
Okay, great. All right. Well, moving on, there is a movement afoot to maintain and restore our lands with native plantings. And recently we met with a woman who grows and nurtures the materials needed to do that.
Minnesota pollinators. My name is Krista Rutger, and I grow Minnesota wildflowers and trees and shrubs. I do a lot with Itasca County Soil and Water, and they have their plant sale, so I provide plants with them. A lot with commercial, with erosion control, roadways, drainage ditches to help the plants help filter out that runoff before it actually hits drains, sewer, the lakes. Sometimes they will have like big projects for homeowners on the lakes, restoring their shore back to natural. I'm seeing a lot more people using natives just for the health benefits. So I grow what I think is needed and then also what someone has contracted me for. Every year I try to add in a couple different varieties that I haven't grown before. Most all of them are really, really easy to grow. It just depends on your soil type. There's always a native plant that can adapt to that situation. Sumac's native to Minnesota. You see it very commonly alongside the road. It grows in sun, shade, wet, dry. It's universal. All the June berries, the red dogwoods, cranberries, I carry those throughout the season because there's always a request for those, especially the red dogwoods. Those are top for erosion control. Native plants, their root systems are 4 times or even more longer, deeper into the ground than your exotics species, that you would pick up at your nursery store that aren't native to Minnesota. The technical definition of a native plant is a plant that has existed here before European settlement, that hasn't been altered, hasn't been brought over, that has lived here without human intervention. A lot of natives require 60, 30, 120 plus days to even get a germination done. So I start seeding in November and then usually every 30 days throughout the winter till March. It's kind of some common ones that are easy just to kind of put in would be like black-eyed Susan, purple coneflowers, butterfly weed, some swamp milkweed. Monarda's another good one. They're kind of fail-proof. The grasses are really good for filtering. So I keep things at a low temp, cover them, and then I always say you have to keep it moist, so I make sure they're all good and watered, cover them with plastic so then the moisture can't escape, and then just hope for the best that I'm mimicking the Minnesota winter as best I can in a controlled environment. Like the mountain ash or like the crab apples. That seed almost has to go through like a bird's gut in order for it to germinate. I've done things as crazy as soaking them in a bowl of water in the fridge and then tumbling them with grit, trying to break it up to mimic, that it kind of went through that system. Being experimentative and trying to think of what those plants might need to actually germinate. So. Yeah, it's fascinating. That's what keeps me going.
So as easy as those natives grow once you get them going, It's interesting process Krista has in trying to collect the seeds and, you know, mimic the conditions and get them to germinate and all of that. It's an interesting job.
Great gardener.
That's kind of the key, though. I mean, you can you really want to take a look at where they're growing naturally and what the natural conditions are, and then just kind of follow that a little bit. So.
She talked about the swamp milkweed, and Bob, you got a couple examples of that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun because people are paying more attention to the milkweeds. This is one that came from seed last year. You notice kind of the real, we call it a lancelet leaf, looks like a lance. And this will grow out as we go through the season. What I found to be really interesting, there's so much interest in a lot of the natives that actually we're getting some rather decorative and showy and very tall cultivars from some of these natives. So there is really a tremendous amount of interest in native materials that will support our butterfly populations, the monarchs in particular, and all the pollinators. So a lot of benefits to these native materials. The thing about swamp milkweed, you got to remind people that even though the common name is swamp milkweed, it grows high and dry. Don't put it down in your swamp. So
Okay.
you gotta,
And a cultivar of the swamp milkweed for folks to look for if they really want one that's not only great for attracting monarchs but beautiful in the garden is a variety called Ice Ballet. And it's a white blooming swamp milkweed that's very pretty.
All right. And we'll talk more about those types of plants and flowers next week when our topic is monarch habitat. Right now, though, we got some questions coming in, so let's get to those. Barb from Duluth is wondering, are there any perennials that actually suffer from division?
No, actually they all, I mean, there's some that they're going to be set back a little bit, and you want to make sure you're doing it right. So if you're doing your division wrong, they're going to suffer from it. But most of them, if it's done right, will actually continue to multiply and grow and expand.
you want to get your timing and don't take them when they're too young. You got to get them established. There's underground stems, root systems, rhizomes. They have to have a little bit of time to get established. But other than that,
Yeah, and really, and as Bob mentioned, timing. Some of them are better in the fall, some of them better in the spring. So she'll want to make sure she identifies what she's going to divide and when the best time to do it is. So.
All right. Jan from Barnum says she has hundreds of small bees, is what she calls them, making anthills all over the yard. What are they?
well, it could be the natives. Most of these, or many of these, overwinter sometimes in the soil. They could be small wasps as well, and again, they're part of this this population of native pollinators that we want to just encourage. If you can tolerate them, I wouldn't interrupt their natural nesting habitat.
Okay. Got to get this one in. Dale from Twig, what do I do for Creeping Charlie? For Creeping Charlie or against Creeping Charlie? This says for Creeping Charlie, so I'm not sure.
Well, Creeping Charlie's in bloom right now,
Yeah.
so folks are really seeing it in their yards. So.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge, and the biggest challenge, if you're not going to use any type of chemical controls, then you're going to have to do a lot of digging, and you're going to have to be pretty careful. Then the other thing you want to do is try to change the habitat. It does so well under shady conditions, and it can outcompete grass. So you want to create an environment, if you're trying to grow grass, full sun, good drainage, you want to create an environment that's conducive to grass rather than Creeping Charlie. If you're going to use some of the chemical controls, the fall of the year is much more effective than at this time.
All right. Krista from Duluth wants to know, what's the earliest that potatoes can be planted?
No, there's a good question.
The other ones were too, Bob.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend anybody. You know, if you could tell me when that last frost is going to be, the risk that you have with potatoes, you can put them in the ground right now, and if you let them bud, you don't want them to go into cold soil where that seed piece might rot. But if they've emerged from the ground, that growing tip is still very frost sensitive. So it won't kill the plant, but it'll set it back and really damage your yields. So generally, to be on the safe side, we say about the second to third week in May.
Okay.
And certainly no great benefit to doing it now. Wait a week or two, and they're still going to produce and give you a good crop if you do the other things that you need to do to
Yeah, there's plenty of season. Really, if you look at the window for potatoes, it's probably May 15th to June 15th in this area, and any time in there, unless you got to have the first new potatoes on the block, but then you want to go as early as you can.
They're good, those new
They
baby
are.
potatoes. All right, Zach from Morgan Park has a question for Tom, and it's about gardening tips for hydrangeas. He wants some gardening tips.
Oh,
for
well, we
hydrangeas.
talked about
just
that.
talked about
Yeah,
a little
about
bit
pruning,
that.
and as Bob mentioned, they bloom both on new and old wood. So it's really now that our buds are just starting to elongate or emerge on our hydrangeas in the area, really looking at where the growth is coming from and doing some nice selective pruning instead of just going in and cutting them down. Because it looks like it's been a great winter for a lot of our shrubs, and hydrangeas like those have done pretty well. So waiting to see, there isn't a great rush on it, or you're not going to have a point where it's too late to do it. So go in, well, relatively within the next couple weeks. Go in and wait for those buds to emerge and then do a little selective pruning. So.
Pretty easy to grow. The more sun you can get, the more bloom that you're going to really get from them. It's a good, well-drained site and a good full sun if you can find it.
Okay. Well, now on to our tour of an area garden where the emphasis is on natural plantings and Minnesota natives.
I'm Vicki Anderson,
And Terry Anderson.
and this is Cloquet, Avenue D, and welcome to our garden.
After the Cloquet fire, what was that?
1918.
A lot of the rubble was bulldozed into this area, so we would find old leather shoes and spark plugs and pieces of Model A's and batteries and kids' toys and everything like that. So it was kind of a rubble and a mess. But we just worked our way up the hill and added a lot of features. We added the creek going up, recirculating, and
One of the first
The
things
gazebo.
was the gazebo that he put up there, which is kind of oriental looking. You know, we like the more standard plants, and one of those is kind of accents, but we really wanted to keep a real, and as you'll see when you go back, a real natural area. The back, I'm hoping, will someday just look like a Minnesota forest floor. All along here I have lady slippers. These are amazingly long-lived plants. I don't know why they like this soil. When you dig down, it's ash from the fire. This is our kind of our pride and joy. That's Hosta, Montana, and that's probably been there 30 years. Our greenhouse is not real warm, so we can't keep a whole lot in there. This is our kind of bird feeder. We don't get many of these berries because the birds get them, but that's great. Gooseberry, thimbleberry, and honeysuckle, and nannyberry. This is like the second year of this. This is a marvelous plant. It's got a nice scent, it attracts bees. It's called Virginia's Bower, and I just love it.
it's great with the morning glories.
I want this to be native plants eventually, you know, basically, kind of a wildflower garden. This is the cup plant. That's a Minnesota native of the prairies, and it's the birds drink out of, and insects, out of the water that accumulates in the stem. Vervain is the purple over there with the little pointy tops, right in front of the Joe Pye weed. That's valerian, that's seeded in that white thing. It has a herbal use as a sedative, hypnotic type of thing. That's spotted touch-me-not. If you rub the juice on your poison ivy, it's supposed to take the sting out. There's a tall mint, fleabane, several kinds of bee balm, and of course lupin, just common sunflowers and different kinds of coneflower. It's a pagoda dogwood. So I'm not sure what kind of a look this is going to end up as, but it's fun playing with the plants. This is where I seed things, and then if they work then and get big enough, then I try to mix them in amongst the taller stuff. This is sea holly, a ridgeron, something like that. And along the edge here we've got a mix of native plants and domestic. This is Ligularia, foam flower, some hostas. But I just like the way it all kind of weaves in amongst itself. And I let it spread. You know, then if I don't like the way it looks, I pull some out. Got a lot of old willow trees that keep falling down and changing the garden shape. So we've just got a policy, we let them lie if we can. Over the years we have added a whole bunch of native Minnesota plants. We've got spring beauties in here, wild ginger.
Jack-in-the-pulpits.
The berries, the red berries, that's baneberry. And there's white baneberry up here too somewhere. Those are poisonous plants. Shakespeare used them in his plays to poison people, I think.
And I took part of the hillside and leveled this all off. So we made it into a croquet court or a game court. And it adds a little variety to the yard, I think. And it's a very quiet, nice area.
But I do walk out here every morning. Even when I worked, I would get up and take my coffee and go out.
That was a beautiful garden. We were fortunate to be able to take a walk through on our bus tour last year. And Vicki is a retired physician, so she has a lot of interest in medicinal aspects of these plants too. So it was very, very interesting to talk to her about what she's got.
Isn't gardening great?
Yeah.
You know, there were a couple of real interesting things, all the natives, and what you kind of have to learn to appreciate, a little more subtle than the bright colors. And, you know, you look at things like texture and how things grow and how that all fits together in kind of a nice little composition, and they've done certainly a beautiful job, both Terry and Vicki.
They sure have. Okay, back to more questions. This one is from Gwen in northern Wisconsin. How do you get rid of ladybugs? And she probably means the
Asian lady beetle is probably what she's concerned about.
Vacuum them.
You know, if they're in the house right now, they've overwintered from last year, and they're not going to reproduce in the house. They're going to eventually die them off, so you just want to eliminate them. And the answer is they're going to be with us for a while. They were an introduced species as a natural predator, and they take care of aphids, among other things, so they have some value there. But anything you can do to tighten the house up in the fall of the year is about all you can do. But don't worry about them. They're not anything to be concerned
They're not going to hurt.
No.
Judy from Duluth wants to know, how can I get rid of finch bugs? She wants an organic way to do that.
Chinch bugs.
Chinch bugs.
Chinch bugs. Okay. There's an F here, but
Yeah.
that's probably what we meant.
Yeah. Well, certainly you can try to trap them. They're active, and we're seeing more of that, I think, as our climate is changing in people's lawns. And they're active around the outside edges of where you're getting those dead patches. You can try to trap the bugs. Not completely effective, and probably the best control is unfortunately going to be an organic or a chemical control on them.
Yeah, they're pretty vulnerable. What she should do is make sure she's got chinch bug, because there's been a lot of people that have identified chinch bug. They don't really have it. So, you know, just a can of water down in the soil, and then try to float some up. And they're very distinctive beetle with a kind of a yellowish cream saddle across the back, and about 1/8 of an inch in length or so. So make sure you've got chinch bug to begin with, because we don't have as much as what people claim they've got. There are other things that can cause problems in the yard. But
here's a tip from a viewer. Darlene in Meadowlands had creeping Charlie that was taking over the lawn and sprayed it with 1 gallon of vinegar plus 1 cup of salt, and it's all gone.
there we go, along with all the grass.
But the creeping Charlie's gone.
Salt and vinegar will burn the top off of just about anything.
Sure.
And maybe that did knock it back, but creeping Charlie, particularly this time of year, wants to come back on you. So
Okay.
It won't kill the roots. So.
no.
Here's a question out of Duluth. I don't know who it's from, but can mother-in-law tongue, Dieffenbachia, and umbrella plant go outside?
Well, when you're really to the point of not worried about frost, they can, but you want to do it incrementally and making sure that they're not getting exposed, because most of our light conditions in our houses are significantly different than what it is outside. So bringing them out, acclimating them to the outside, but once we're beyond that stage of worrying about frost and they've acclimated properly and changed their watering, because they're going to drink a lot more outside, they'll be fine for the summer, but then bringing them in before we get any colds. So.
And
Question, oops.
I was just going to say, one thing we've both learned is protect from the sun and from the wind.
Yep.
For a while, at least. Yeah.
Okay. Here's a question out of Tofty. I planted an apple tree 10 years ago. A bear climbed the tree and really broke it up. Should I prune it a lot?
The bear or the tree? Sorry.
I'm assuming the tree.
Well, if there are areas that are damaged, you know, we're really caution people about pruning during the growing season. Any of these, we're so worried about fire blight. So anything that's dead and gone, they can trim up a little bit, but I think you want to try to prune to a central leader, something that's going to restore the form and the capability of the tree to flower into fruit eventually.
Yeah.
But next winter is going to be the best time, late winter.
Yeah, and removing any of those that have been broken or damaged or
Right.
unrepairable, because really if you get a nice clean cut, it's much better chance of that healing than the big rips or tears in it. So.
I think we have time for one more. Betty from Proctor is wondering, what's the difference between mandevillas and
Diplodelia.
Diplodelia.
And really, it's the color of the flower. One of them is pink and one of them is red. Mandevilla is a red and Diplodelia is a pink.
But otherwise, they're the same thing?
Well, they're similar. They look very similar. And for most people, you can't tell the difference.
And the care is the same?
Care is the same.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Excellent answers to some really great questions. And we want to tell folks that thanks to you, we also have pictures to share. So we have some beautiful blooms that abound in this week's Grow and Show. Inspired perhaps by our recent program on daylilies, Mary Sanders of Kettle River shares the photos of her lovely lilies of the day variety. Mary says she loves a morning of deadheading yesterday's blooms because it gives her some time to enjoy the flowers up close each day. She uses pictures like these on her handmade greeting cards. Carol Brown of Hermantown cherishes this white trillium that is an heirloom plant from the garden of her grandma, Kay. And from Cindy Johns Geeson of Duluth, an apple tree in blossom. Some favorites of her Annabelle hydrangea with neighboring hosta in a stilby. An arrangement with pink diamond hydrangea. Some pumpkins in need of a little support. And the swing overlooking the lake in a garden of shade. Cindy's husband created this meditation garden for her as a birthday gift. If you have gifts from the garden to share, send your photos to greatgardening@wdsc.org. Love getting those pictures and sharing them, and to send pictures, or if you want to check out others that we've received, or watch past episodes of Great Gardening, be sure and go to our website. It's wdsc.org/gardening. Lots of good stuff on there, so we hope that you check it out. Well, I suspect that you two will be working harder than ever from this day forward out in the gardens.
We're
I hope not.
not working
Not
that
harder than ever.
It's going to happen. It's amazing. I'm kind of wondering
is
what
the
happened this
season.
spring.
Yeah.
You know, we went right from this
We
cool winter
waited
condition
and
to
waited and waited, and now here it is.
and I'll tell you, it's going to be nice and warm, nice weekend to really get things started. It's going to change in a hurry, so I think people can really get started. Soil temperatures are warming.
Yeah, and certainly don't rush things for folks. There's still plenty of time on those warm season vegetables and getting those that want to get the annuals out yet or anything like that. It's still too
Anything that's frost
But get out and go to your local nurseries and greenhouses and buy Mother's Day gifts, and lots to find, fun things to find for the garden out there.
Never go wrong, and we've got so many good local greenhouses. We love to support our local people, and they're just a storehouse of information too.
All right, thank you so much for your time and your expertise, and we want to thank everyone for calling in and for all of you for watching. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy the garden.